Okay, we'll call the Governor's UAS Council meeting to order. It's November 18th. And we'll start with a roll call. Which Huseby? Pretty sure I saw him on the list there. Yeah.
I'm here.
Dan Olson. Don't see Dan yet. Dustin Temple. Gordy Kahn.
I'm here.
James Strait.
Here.
Jen Fowler. She messaged she was going to be running late. Mike Bosman.
Yes, here.
Here. Paul Stepaniak.
Here.
Steve White.
Here.
Wes Err. Joe Froelich.
Here.
And myself. All right. Just make a couple notes on that. All right. It's been a few weeks since we've met here. So we do have quite a few updated documents to go over, which is great. Let me just give me 1 second here to update my list. All right, so I'm going to start getting into, we'll start with a procurement process update and see how far we can get through these here today. So I will share the screen on that one. Let's see if I can get all these things to line out. Appreciate your patience while we try to bring up the different documents and share them. Okay. Everybody should see that.
Yep.
Yes, procurement recommendations. So after conferring with the governor's office, they wanted to see our recommendations more in the form of a memo. And so as we discussed in the past, I've revamped the policy draft we had into this memo format. And we'll probably do that with some of the other documents that we were putting together. Steve, I know you put some together and worked great using that format. It helps us gather the information. We'll probably transfer it to a memo format in time. So just to go through this, I've been working on this for a while and finally got it uploaded last night. So I recognize most people probably haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. But I would encourage you to please do so. My intent is to add comments to the document when you review it, especially after our discussion here today. And then I want to review it again with the governor's office to see if I've covered the explanation on things that they were looking for. Many of the things when we wrote the policy type of draft, we were trying to keep as a good policy should be, keep it from being too verbose. And the governor's office in the more memo format wanted more explanations into some of the thinking and reasoning behind some of what we were recommending. So the memo becomes more verbose in that sense. So I tried to flesh out some of the things they were asking for as explanations as to why we were recommending what we're recommending, as I'll explain here in a second. So we basically, I give purpose and scope still. General requirements, we talked about this in the past, just outlining the document coming here. UAS comprised, I think I modified this, and maybe since the last time we discussed the 4 main components. Oh no, I think we did mention this, to include the flight control mechanism, which it really comes under the FAA and the definitions of a UAS system, and the data. And then kind of revamp some of this, incorporating a little bit from what I gained from your document, Steve, on some of the FAA authorities and things, and tried to reword this a little more appropriately. I feel like every time I look at it, I could wordsmith it some more, so I'm trying to quit. But if someone else has something they can do to help clean it up or better communicate, if I'm not clear on a certain area, please get in here and make those modifications in the next few days if you could. Again, highlighting that if there's a component of the UAS system that would attach to the network, then it would have to go through an ITPR request with the state. Joe, some of the notes you had put in were incorporated down here, talking about the data collected by the device. I'm not sure the FAA includes data as part of a UAS system, but because of the questions around that component of what we do here in the state of Montana, I think we've felt to add it. And that data has to follow the data, IT, privacy, and security laws and things, and just referencing that those things would apply, as well as reference to some of those MCAs and administrative rules.
Yeah, perfect. That meets the needs there, Cray. Thank you.
Yep. Cost and benefit analysis. So in this one is where in this first paragraph we highlight that the council's recommendation is to focus on a cost benefit of a program and not per device. And so here I mentioned where the legislative audit was recommending a cost benefit before purchasing a device. We kind of go into a little explanation that the program seems to be a better thing to be doing a cost benefit analysis on, and then each device would just be analyzed with how it pertains and fits within the program if another device or replacement device is still a worthwhile endeavor in light of the overall advantages of the program. Basically kind of on the line that doing it per device, especially for a prosumer, may be overly encumbering and less beneficial. It just creates more paperwork for people than the actual intent of making sure that the state monies are being used in a worthwhile fashion and not poorly utilized. And then I do a little bit explanation of why we're recommending we go with a $5,000 limit, aligning with state procurement policy instead of the $1,000 threshold that was picked, I believe, by the governor's office. And why we would recommend that. And so I think they're open to considering of that. And I think we have good reasoning behind it, that an arbitrarily lower threshold for UASs and not other types of procurements the state makes, just there isn't good justification for something like that. So I think we're pretty set there on at least the reasoning behind that. This is, we've had this for quite some time, what a cost benefit analysis includes. They did ask for a little more explanation on the a new program or a significant procurement. I really can't come up with a way of fleshing that out more than what we already say. Significant procurement requiring a full competitive procurement process is pretty much defined out. And so I just kind of referenced the Montana State Procurement Bureau guy that one of you had pointed us to. So that's a hyperlink, and it's also listed here as far as that goes. And it's still it's a recommendation that for those significant things, an agency may want to do a full business case analysis, but left up to the discretion of the agency at how extensive that needs to be. I'm kind of content to try to leave it there if other people are as well.
Yeah, this is Mike. I agree with that, Cray.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate that, folks. We'll see if we can get that to fly. This section is new. They wanted us to address the issue of the shared UAS resource pool. So I don't know that Jen's joined us yet, but she did a really good job writing up a write-up on the discussion we had a few weeks ago on this topic. It was agreed by everybody that there was some real concerns around that. So check over this section, see if it correctly captures the discussion. Basically, what we're saying is, look, this is different than cars and motor vehicles due to the FAA regulations of what we have to log and track for every type of device, along with the significant concern of the liability portion and the liability that may be incurred by one department using a device that another department then uses incomplete logs or documentation of events that may have occurred. Could, you know, the second using department incur liability if there was an event that occurred that may have been partially at fault for the first department using the device and such. I did do, so I fleshed out a little bit more and added to what she had, if you reviewed her stuff. So we kind of summarized that the council determined that given the increased risk with shared devices and logistics around maintaining proper inventory availability, equipment delivery around the state, tracking each mission log and maintenance performance record, the shared US pool is not a cost benefit at this time. And then she had a couple of suggestions if they did want to do this, and I kind of adopted those things and wordsmithed it a bit. But if the state wanted to adopt a shared pool of UAS resources, and so this is kind of where we say, look, our recommendation is this probably isn't a good idea at this time. But if you were insisting on doing it, here's a couple things you really should consider, insist on. That the shared resource include the pilot as well as the device. So when you procure that, you're procuring both the aircraft as well as the pilot that operates it. That helps reduce the liability of familiarity with the device and the training required of a particular device, so that you don't have pilots getting a device they're less familiar with flying, which we highlight a little bit above. And then the centralized statewide office, that if we're going to have a shared pool, that there should be an office established and funded that officially oversees that pool and the management of all those devices. So it would ensure that the personnel and pilots that are flying them are trained, the maintenance activities of devices, scheduling of the resources, what department gets the device, when, collection of mission reports, the pilot services, making sure the device gets to where it needs to be, and those things. Mike, I kind of stole from the release budget. You guys had a request because you had mentioned you were looking at fleshing out more of your department's UAS program. So I took a look at your budget estimate for the 3 FTE you were asking for. I added a little bit to it, and then just imagine what it would cost to have devices and do some management of that, moving them around the state, having pilots drive around the state using motor pools, lodging and whatnot. And so I kind of came up with a rough estimate that 4 to 5 FTE to manage the logs, to do the flying, to do this work and oversee it all, and the collection of it is probably going to be 650 to 700,000 annually. And so I put that in, but I'm certainly open for comments or discussions on that, so that that we do show that we did consider what it would take to run this kind of a thing the way the FAA wants us to, and whether agencies would actually find a cost benefit in doing a centralized operation like that, to help justify why we don't think that's probably a good idea for the state, at least at this time of our maturity of it. And I'll stop right there for a second and just see any other comments or thoughts along these lines.
Ray, I've got a quick comment if I could. One thing I kind of reflect on here is a big thing with the FAA with the Part 107 requirements is that there's a huge emphasis on the final say on the safety aspect of the UAS for making sure it's not going to have any issues, and that's with the pilot in command, the PIC. And the one thing I reflect on when I go through this is that I don't think this is understood or appreciated by people that aren't around UAS, is that they'd say, well, let's just have a central place that everybody could come and pick up their equipment and check it out and all of this, just like a car. The problem that you have with UAS, different than the motor pool, is that who is going to be responsible? I mean, the motor pool makes sure that the cars are running and the oil's changed and all this type of stuff. But when it comes to UAS, it's the pilot in command that is going to be the ultimate decider of that this equipment's ready to fly. and you can't pass that on to somebody else. And so that's why when you're dealing with different agencies or different departments, that they have their pilots that are responsible for the UASs that are within that department. And if you start passing them around, then you lose control of the preventative maintenance side of it. And I don't know where it would fit in this, but it really is another thing that would help educate, the non-UAS folks that are that would look at, and I can understand how they say, well, let's just have a central clearinghouse for these things, like the state motor pool, because that's a great example. And we have little motor pools around the state for some of the field offices, probably. But we can't do that with the UAS. We need to make sure that they're maintained and that there's somebody responsible. And the FAA is very determined to make sure that when that thing takes off, that nobody is going to be held responsible except the pilot in command. And so that's, if the previous flight, they hurt something, or there was a malfunction and nobody recorded it, then you're just passing down the line the problem. So I don't know where it fits, but that just kind of hit me when you were going through that. So.
That's a really good point, Steve. Thanks. I don't know if you're able to add a couple sentences and add a paragraph in here, and I think we can insert that either right before or after the liability discussion, that is a significant concern, and that a centralized resource may pose greater risk because of the inability to effectively certify that unless the pilot goes with it all the time and is running the device and missions for the agency.
I'll take a look at it for you. I'm just hypersensitive to it right now because I just spent the last couple of days studying for my Part 107 recurrent. I took that yesterday, and everything about the FAA everything boils down to the PIC is going to be on the hook for anything that goes wrong. And he doesn't have the opportunity to blame it on some maintenance guy or the guy that used it before him. It's the PIC that when he flies, he's fully responsible, and that PIC works for an agency. So anyway, that's my two bits.
Yeah, well, if I was a PIC grabbing a device, I would get pretty nervous about.
Yeah, for sure.
If I'm going over people. If I'm going over a field, I probably would be like, eh. But if I'm in a populated area or anything like that, my goodness, I would be quite nervous.
Well, here's the one problem too I reflect on in regard to that too, and I don't want to belabor it, but if you're doing winter projects, you have no idea how careful the previous users were with the batteries.
No.
Did they leave them in the car, and then do they really have half the available flight time that they did before the last guy used them? I mean, this is one issue where there needs to be a responsible party, and I think the best place is the agency. So just something else to add to it, maybe.
Well, and on the safety and security of that, if there was a centralized resource, it just reinforces there would have to be pilots that would go with that.
Yeah, right.
In which case, any other thoughts or comments on the numbers I'm putting down here in two from folks or around the whole thing? Mike, you guys did analysis for your 3-shot, but that was mostly people, I think, and not a whole lot on equipment. Does this seem like a reasonable shot of a number for an estimate?
I think so. Yeah, I want to kind of buzz through it and read the whole thing, Craig, but yeah, I think so.
Yeah, please, by all means, take a look and see if there's any other comments we want to add to help fortify the argument, the discussion of why that could be problematic to run for the state. And I think a key word I added to help us out is at this time. If anyone from the legislative audit division or somebody really had a bone to pick on this, that leaves the door open. Look, in several years, you can come back and take a look again. But right now, it just seems, especially, you know, given where the legislature is going to be coming in and dealing with budget issues, the discussion of starting a new government service, and quote unquote, looking at an expansion of government is not going to fly very far, no pun intended, right now, and make more sense to have the agencies build it into the programs with existing resources. But so then I go into a little bit on recommending that departments with limited UAS service needs consider either procuring services from the private sector or an MOU with the departments having a more mature program, which we had discussed as well. And that way, you know, if we were going to hire MDT or somebody to come out and do a flight for us, they could provide the pilot as well as the device, and we're just covering the cost of whatever they deem that would cost that we agree on.
Hey, Cray, on that, now where you moved, I gotta find it.
Oh, sorry.
Departments with limited UAS service needs. What about departments with limited UAS service instead of service resources? Because their service need might be one thing, but if they don't have the resources, they could outsource it.
Yeah, that's
true. So instead of service, take out the word service and put resources. Does that make sense?
Departments with limited UAS resources.
That's how I look at it, because I don't see the DOR buying the systems at any time soon, but we could outsource them, and I don't know if it would be I think that would work for us, that wording, I guess.
Sure. No, I don't have a problem with that. The thinking I was there's a lot of departments that have limited resources that may justify starting their program.
Yeah, and
but it's the ones that only have a flight every couple of months. They might need somebody that it wouldn't make sense for them to
certainly do that. It could go either way, I guess. I see that. Yeah, I don't know. Just thought.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. And then a little comment that the real value when it comes to sharing around UAS systems is in sharing the data, not so much the devices. The data sharing can have real benefit by reducing duplication of effort, and also subsequent, and I don't know that I worded this very well, but I was trying to word increased value from already acquired mission data for secondary citizen services. What I was trying to get at there is if you've collected data, there may be a secondary benefit that another state agency's program may find by using that data different than its original intended collection use. And so, let's I'll just make some, let's say Department of Transportation collects a lot of imagery along their highways. Maybe the Department of Agriculture would like to review that imagery to identify large patches of noxious weeds that need treating or something like that. Maybe you guys treat those too, I don't know, but something that there's a residual benefit from that data without having to go recollect it. So if someone has a better way of wordsmithing that, that'd be fine too. And I don't know if we want this line in here or not. Jen had it, just making a point that we all agreed on that discussion. But if we want
to, Cray, I'll jump in on that. I was wondering if this was going to be there. That's my line. Jen doesn't have any she doesn't have to be blamed for it by. I'd like to blame her, but I won't. But it was my line to put in there. I put it in there really kind of for discussion, and it's kind of a strong sentence, but it's a strong issue too. When I'm looking at this document, I reflect on not just the governor's office, but I reflect on the legislators that don't understand the industry and don't understand the complexity of what's going on, and they don't understand the involvement of the FAA with a lot of this, I'd like to see something, some way for them to take this document seriously in the recommendations of our council. I was kind of being a little cavalier, I suppose, with putting that in there because I didn't really know if we never voted on it. I just kind of thought that the sense I had was everybody was kind of on the same page, which was good. But if legislators say, well, this is all good and said, but we're gonna, we're trying to, do it in an efficient way. And that was the spirit of the legislators that even sought for this council to be formed, that we want to really review this. And I just think you're going down the wrong path if you try to start sharing equipment. And, it's not an issue of agencies protecting their purchases. It's an issue of safety and FAA regs and just doing things right. And so I stuck that out there just simply to add some reinforcement to what we did. And there's a better way to do it. I mean, if everybody wants to take that out of there, I don't care. But I just thought it was a pretty strong statement to put out there. So I don't know. It's whatever you guys want to do with it.
This is Paul. I don't know if we can say unanimous because I don't know if everybody was on there when we discussed it.
Yeah, I don't know either, Paul. I don't know.
You can certainly say this is the opinion of the council regarding the proposition of agency because I think we had a quorum enough to be able to say that. So I agree that that's how we felt. So I have no problem with it staying in some way or form.
Okay. Yeah, we could wordsmith it and see what you want to come up with. But I wanted to make sure everybody understood that I'm the one that authored that line and it's up for discussion. So.
Anybody else have any comments on it, on that line?
I'll just add my 2 cents. This is Dan. I do like that line. I think that spells it out. I think you're totally right on there, Steve, with that.
Okay. Well, it's unanimous for the people that were there that talked about it.
Yeah, we had a number of people on the call and everybody agreed because we asked that question. And so it was for that. The thing that's important about it that I think is because we have some citizen involvement on this council, which I really appreciate. It's if it was just agencies saying, yeah, we don't think that's a big idea, we're going to get a lot of pushback. And so there is some merit to having that in there because we are pushing back against a position of the legislative audit folks on it. And so, if we're asking a governor office to push back on the legislative audit folks, then they want to know that they have some good backing on who is in on that decision and why. So I think to your point earlier, Steve, I think fleshing out a paragraph a little bit more on the FAA and safety and the responsibilities of that Island Command would be good to add in there as the justification that this is a real issue around safety, a real issue around logistics, liability, I think is a huge issue, as well as the cost of actually doing this correctly. And that those things combined just doesn't make it seem like a good idea for the path of how this should be developed again at this time.
Well, and anybody that knows me, that they realize that if anybody wants to see some way to cut costs and make things more organized with a central clearinghouse, it would be me. But in this case, I'll swim against the tide of the non-UAS opinionators that, hey, this is one arena that you can't do that in. And I would suggest adding maybe a word after the word council, just say members, council members. So it didn't say the entire council, it just said members. Well, how many were in the room? Okay, we'll just call it good. Yeah, there you go.
And not to get too far off on that, but after looking and kind of studying this and examples of efficiencies by centralizing services, I'm not a believer that everything centralized can be run more cost effectively than not. And we're in an ideal world, you could say if this was run really slick and efficiently, it would save money if every agency was leveraging it. Because the level of effort needed by different agencies varies. Some agencies would get a deal, and other agencies would pay a lot more than another method, just to cover the cost of managing those people full time and such. Do I have, if you right sized it, you could get them, flying every day, that the weather would allow. But is it really going to be the most efficient overall in government? Plus for the extra time, I've seen too many instances where whether or not it would be in an ideal world, the way government does it doesn't end up working out that way.
Well, a motor pool, I think, is a great example. I think works great. I mean, everybody goes to one place to get their cars, and they know they're being maintained, and they got their credit cards with the cars, and I mean, everything is really good. And this UAS pool is not the same situation as a motor pool. And I don't know how the state deals with manned aircraft. I don't know. Does DNRC share their helicopters with other departments or agencies, or are those just DNRC?
Those are just DNRCs. And generally, if we needed to do an MOU or something, another agency, if they had a need for a flight.
Because I don't think you're going to see anybody march over to the Department of Justice and want to take the MHP's helicopters for a ride. I don't think that's going to happen. And I'll tell you, it's important to realize too that probably the Highway Patrol's helicopters are outfitted differently than the DNRCs. DNRCs are more tuned in for the fires, and MHP are more tuned in for traffic control and looking for people. And so maybe if you can say that the manned aircraft can't be pooled, then it's a natural progression to say the UAS aircraft can't be pooled.
Yeah.
So, and because I don't like seeing somebody use an example. So, well, if they're doing it with the manned, why can't we do it with the unmanned?
Right. Now, when you have things that potentially can fall out of the sky, people take it pretty seriously. Not that there isn't real risk and liability with vehicles, but where people driving vehicles are, it's been well adopted throughout society that most of us have driver's license, and you can move from one vehicle to the other and do a relatively decent job driving it.
Yep.
There's a few exceptions. Some people, you're not going to jump into a standard with a stick and be able to do it well.
Right.
But largely those things are uniform in the motor pool. When you're coming to UAVs, it's just not at that point right now.
Right.
They're not mature to that level, and so it doesn't deserve the same treatment at this point in time. Will it ever? I'm not sure it will, just because the risk is different and such.
Right.
But okay, and to wrap this part of the discussion up, this is pretty much just mostly a copy and paste additional recommendations, which I'm not even sure this section is necessarily needed anymore in our memo statement. It was in the policy part. Some definitions got added and updated, thanks to, I think Jen added some links to the ECFR.
Back on those definitions, Craig, if I could just jump in, I uploaded a document that I put together of definitions, and when I did that, I've got things more than this, but it's only a little over a page. But I was going to ask what everybody thinks of maybe having a separate definition section, and that everything could point to. And then you take it out of this and you just have a definition section, a definitions memo or whatever it would be, and do it that way.
Yeah, I was going to point people to that after this, that you had that document. I thought it was great.
Okay.
And we could do that. We could pull this limited section out and just reference the attached definitions document for definitions as needed.
It's
and
whatever anybody wants.
Yeah, we could send that, and with every memo we send up, we could add the same definitions document. There's no reason we can't.
Okay.
Ultimately, I think what we're going to hang on is this right here, is that, look, if you have anything else that needs defined, check the ECFR.
Right.
and see how they define it. And we're just pretty much going to fly with that.
Mhm. Good.
I did add a little bit here about a systems program. The definition from the ECFR on a program was, and it was correct, but not exactly helpful. I think it got kind of pulled out of the dictionary. And so I added a few examples of what we would consider as a program in a State Department. All this relevant legislation, executive orders and stuff, I just left in there basically and added for reference, so that whoever goes, so theoretically, if we give a memo to the governor's office and they turn over to DOA and say, will you please turn this into a policy, they have everything already put in place that we researched to help out with that. And then of course the same form that we had beforehand. All right, so that's the procurement draft. Please try to take that look at that and review that in the next few days. I would like to request that folks try to review that this week, so that I can have a discussion with the governor's office next week on if we're close to something that meets their needs, and then we can put a final stamp on our memo and get that over to there. Ultimately, it'd be nice to have this released to the governor's office by early December, so that we have made progress on delivering on something that was in the executive order that was given to us to do.
Could I ask two questions? One is, do they take this memo and redo it in a different format? Maybe back to the format we were originally looking at, or do they take it and just does this become the document?
Steve, it is a good question. I don't have a clear answer on that. I couldn't get a clear answer exactly what they'll do with it. I think they'll look at that and then determine of what we recommend that they want to put into some type of a policy or directive or what they're going to do with that. I mean, it's given where we're at in the term, it's going to be a little awkward if they do a governor's directive or executive order, because that may only be valid for a few weeks. So I'm a kind of imagining that it would get turned over to DOA, which I believe is the agency that generates most policies, and they would craft it into a policy, in which case they may want a copy of what the version we had before. I don't know.
Are you suggesting also that, like the citizen interaction policy, which I worked on, that should be in memo form also?
Yeah, I think we're going to turn those into memo forms as well. And
so there's a different memo for each part of the project.
So what I was envisioning, so back to our objectives document on what the executive order asked us to do, we had two major things to deliver: a procurement process recommendation, which is what we've just been reviewing here, and then the Montana UAS plan. And that plan would be the centralized oversight ideas and recommendations, and the citizen interaction recommendations. And then finally, coordination integration with the university system. So what I'd like to do is do a memo on the section 1, the procurement process recommendation, and take care of that separately. And then we'll be developing a memo on what the Montana UAS plan should look like, and recommend that, of what that should look like, and then see what kind of steps the governor's office wants to take with those memos. And on that Montana UAS plan, depending on the progress we make over the next few weeks on that. I mean, that very well could be the next administration that's taking a look at that plan, and ultimately we need to be working with them anyway, because whatever the plan recommendation is, we're going to need that administration's support on how that gets implemented here in Montana. So it's going to be an interesting time on that.
Okay, good.
Because our council really doesn't have authority to create policy. So what we're doing is giving a recommendation on the direction that policy that they create should be, is basically what it comes down to. Good. Hence why memo format. Did you have a second question on that?
No, those are my two questions, actually.
Okay. Somebody else had something?
Great, this is Joe Froelich, and I just had a question kind of tag on to that discussion. Is Don Harris has offered his services to review, any policies, documentation that we have for legal review from a DOA SITSD standpoint. And I'm not sure if if these documents, some of them are ready for him to put in front of him, and for his review.
Well, this one we're working on, certainly he could and take a look at that and see if there's anything that was of concern or that he could help us shore up. For example, when it comes to state procurement policy, rules, law, what are we referencing there? If he could help flesh that out or solidify that, that'd be great. And you kind of lead into my next question and topic, Joe, was the citizen right to privacy, and if we've acquired any other information from legal folks on that, if you've heard back from Don or anybody on that from DOA. Or
I have not. That's a great question. I posed that to him, and he, we had the conversation of what other documents but he was going to look into that. He has not provided that information back. I'll try to get. Let's see. Oh no. At this point, I don't have a response from him on any additional privacy.
Okay.
And Craig, this is Gordy. I'm hopefully in the next couple of weeks be able to review some of this with our legal folks here at Revenue to get any of their input.
That'd be great. Really appreciate it. I've been reviewing it with DNRC's legal team, but as I told them, and I think I said here, really would like some other agencies' legal folks to review this stuff as well, so that we're getting a broader spectrum. One thing I have observed is that sometimes agency legal and DOA legal and such don't always have the same opinion. And so if we get a few people to either agree or to give us different points of views, then at least we can consider that as we try to put forth a recommendation. So.
Sure.
All right. Anything else on this document? Or I'm going to move on.
Looking good.
All right. So please try to take a look at this in the next few days. Add any comments, even if the comment is, I'm happy with this. I think it's ready or something like that. That'd be great. So we get some feedback. Just to point out a few other things, Steve was kind of highlighting under the general tab and files, there's been a few other documents added here. So we have, he's added the definitions draft that he was just referencing. This looks like a great short version of key terms to have defined for people that are unfamiliar with this so much. And as well as, do we have a link to that? I don't see it. Maybe what we do want to do is add a link to the top to the part 107 definitions, 107.3.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
To cover anything that's not covered.
Yeah, this is more of just a thinking working document. So the big thing I wanted to highlight is right in the center of the screen there. I wanted to pound away at what is the National Airspace System, because this is the hub of the wheel. That paragraph, I hope, establishes the importance and significance of the involvement of the FAA in anything that any state wants to employ. And so anybody that reads that maybe I'd hope would walk away with a better appreciation for the fact that the FAA does indeed recognize and exercise authority over unmanned aircraft, and they also employ the airspace classifications that unmanned aircraft pilots have to adhere to. And so I stuck in as much. It was a long paragraph, but I did it simply that somebody that's not familiar, they're just thinking you've got a toy drone flying around your backyard. They don't realize that what you guys are doing, if your agencies, really, you're utilizing the National Airspace System, and that's a significant thing to always consider with any policy that any state government would create. So that's why I stuck that in there. So.
Yeah, yep. Nope, that's good. So folks can take a look at that, but that may be something that we just send up with our other memos and instead of having that section as we were referencing. Anybody else have any legal reviews on citizen right to privacy? I didn't hear anything, but.
In that document you're about ready to click, I think I have some privacy stuff there that people could read and look at.
This is Mike. I was going to have our legal folks look at it, Craig.
Okay, that'd be great.
And there's one thing in this document too, Craig, that is highlighted red. It should be down a ways. It's in a paragraph. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Everybody should take a look at that, and our small work group can also take a look at it and have some discussion, but this is something to think about. I highlighted that red because I wanted to bring up that for discussion that this paragraph talks about how that we can, how we operate over private property, and we're going to try to notify the owners before the flight. But this one sentence, does it set up a precedence that would be damaging to what we're doing? Is that if the property owner insists to deny the flight access, which he technically can't because he doesn't own the airspace, it is, I could put that in parentheses, it is recommended that the flight be delayed if possible until resolution with the property owner is resolved. Okay, DOR probably has a bigger problem with this than anybody else, but I don't know if that needs to be in there, but by putting it in there, it lets the public know that, wow, they're being respectful for my property rights. Well, yeah, but you really can't deny access, but we're making you think you can, but don't do it, because push comes to shove, you really don't have that right. We can't take off on your property. So if you're filming a house that's a mile down the private driveway, yeah, you can't fly that far. So you're gonna probably have to drive down the driveway. Now you can't take off. But in this case, if you're a county road taking off and you're flying, doing a project that you got to fly across the corner of somebody's property or over a subdivision, they just don't have that right. But if we put that kind of sentence into this document, are we establishing a right? And that would be troublesome. So this is where the legal guys need to jump in. This could be a really bad sentence to put in there, and I recognize that, and that's why I highlighted red. So,
and this is one area where I want to talk to our DR legal folks about.
Good.
So
I'll do the same with SITSD DOA.
Yeah, just use that whole paragraph there, and I mean, I've included a section of law that says you can't harass, injure, or attempt to injure livestock, and that's an MCA, so that's okay. But this is a big deal, I think. And it's sad because, you know, we don't want to do anything adverse to property owners, but that was the entire foundation of their attempt to pass legislation in the last couple of sessions. Like, you cannot fly across anybody's property, whether you're public agency or private, without a written easement, official easement for the area that you're going to fly in. Well, you don't own that airspace. Otherwise, Delta and United, you're going to have to get an easement from them too. So
Yeah, I'd like an agreement for that.
We've got laws that allow appraisers to enter property, and if they don't, then we can estimate the value of the property.
Yep.
But I don't know. That'll be interesting how we work the drone into that whole. If they say they don't want us around their property, maybe we don't use that data on their property when we estimate it. That's what we'll have to, yeah.
Well, DOR, the way, and I'm a user, I'm a customer of DOR. The way they do it is that they take pictures with the property record card and they compare the pictures to the current version of the property. If they see any changes, they can make visual changes, but you're right. can't come marching into the house and saying, well, I want to count the bedrooms. And if they don't let you in, you've got to estimate the bedrooms. You know, if you're just using this for an aerial of a property from the road, but still you can fly over their place. And none of us want strange drones flying over their place, but it's legal and it's controlled by the feds. So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So, Gordy, that'd be great. I'm really interested in DORs because I think DORs dealt with this in another way, right? So you do it from a distance, you do an estimate from the road. I thought that it was pretty well written, Steve. You know, it really addresses keeping good PR between the government agency and the public, and just clarifying. And I think this is also, as you were saying, important to establish this and your other definition that you had in there, that look, you know, from an FAA standpoint, you know, legally, here's where things fall. And I'm thinking this in line of legislators trying to do something. But what would help quite a bit with that is if the recommendation of state agencies, look, if the citizen is going to have a problem with this, let's find another positive way of getting resolution to the issue. Unless, you know, it's an emergency or another thing could be found. Leaving a state agency up to the discretion is probably a good thing there. You know, it could be that the state then has to just do it at a much higher altitude, or someone with a COA has to do it where they can use a higher resolution by higher flight, so it's not so invasive or something.
Well, there's one sentence in there that is aimed at the legislators, and I'd like to see it stay in there. And that says the airspace authority is solely controlled by the FAA. It's not shared, but the FAA doesn't share that control with anyone. And legislators tend to think that it's state laws can trump the feds, but no, not with the Civil Air Act. And so the word solely is singular. So that was why I put that sentence in there.
And you had a little bit of that mentioned in your definition paragraph there.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Those are good things for us to have on hand if we get asked about it, to be able to have that discussion and to guide them down the proper way of handling that kind of legislation. The comment I had on it was that, you know, we have one example of another statute to keep in mind. You know, do we add a couple others so that there's more than one example, or do we just leave it as in mind other state statutes that may apply, and or how we handle that one? You know, I thought we could always add the one about not having drones fly near wildfires.
That'd be good too.
Because there really aren't that many that actually exist around this topic. No. So it wouldn't be too difficult to throw a few in there or not, but so people can weigh in on that.
Yeah.
So take a look at this document. We're going to run out of time here in this meeting, but did a really good job. Really appreciate you putting this together, trying to formulate how this came to be. There's a little bit of history here on the Civil Air Act, and what kind of operations the FAA does have restrictions or guidance on for use of this, that goes into the when should an agency fly or not fly, that obviously the piloting command should be very familiar with, and the citizen right to privacy piece. The couple of paragraphs here really could probably be using for more attorneys to review this. So feel free to grab this and get intake and attorneys to wordsmith, add, make comments, anything to help us strengthen this area, especially when it comes around to when can you take a picture of somebody from a public space that is not necessarily invasive, and when can we not. There's not a lot of laws here in the US around that in a sense, which is very nice. Right now in Europe, I think it's very restrictive, painfully so. And if we behave well, hopefully we can keep it positive for everybody.
And this was a longer document. I appreciate greatly that Jennifer took time to read it and slice and dice it.
Yeah, I appreciate both you guys taking a look at this and making comments, which should still be captured here, both from Jennifer and now myself, and hopefully everyone else when you take a look at it. So. All right. Anything else on that for now? Okay. I'm going to, I think I sent it out already for the work group meeting we're going to host tomorrow to continue chewing on those topics, especially around the central organization authority type of management and the citizen interaction piece. I'm anticipating we'll probably have another one in the following week or the week after. For those that haven't been getting updated on the meeting notices, hopefully everybody got that update. But I did cancel next week's UAS council meeting, being the day before Thanksgiving. I had a suspicion that we weren't going to get a lot of attendance. And the week after, I had a conflict, so I've canceled that one as well, but may reschedule a different one for later in that week. Otherwise, what we'll probably try to do is have a couple of work group sessions to continue improving these documents. And that way, when we meet again on I can't see the calendar from a distance, somewhere around the 9th, I think is a Wednesday. Then hopefully we have some documents with a lot of good edits and improvements to that. So if you have legal folks reviewing these things, if you could get those edit changes back by that time frame, that would be fabulous.
So is our work group meeting tomorrow then? Or when is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
tomorrow at noon.
Noon? Okay. Good. Works.
Let's see if I had any other. Did anybody add any other documents to the team site that we've missed mentioning? Jen, I know you late to the meeting. You added that document. Most of what you added, I've incorporated in that other document that we talked about earlier. But is there anything else that we haven't highlighted that we should be highlighting? Okay, hearing none. All right, talk to the meetings. Keep your eyes open for any schedule changes on meetings and things. I really appreciate the work people put into this, the time put into this. I know we've asked a lot of time in a short time frame on this, and it's been expressed to me by several different areas of appreciation. And actually, frankly, I think the governor's office was impressed that we were meeting so regularly, trying to make progress on this. So really appreciate the effort people do. And in line with requirements here, is there any other member comments or items of discussion that we'll need to address?
This is Mike. The only other thing I would throw out is they're starting to see a lot more bill drafts out there. And if people see anything related to UAS, please share it with the group. I've been watching, but haven't seen anything specific yet.
Yeah, they got over 1,000 sitting out there and I haven't seen anything either. So, and you can look for keywords pretty easily. I don't know if anybody gets out there and looks at all of them, but if you do I think it's a Control F, will bring up a search and you can just look for unmanned or drone or UAS or anything. But so far there's nothing out there. So.
Yep, good points. They're going to start dropping, flying fast here in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Any other member comments or items for discussion or future discussion? Any public comments? Do we have any members of the public on the call? Not seeing any. All right, so we will adjourn for today. If I don't talk with some of you before next week, have a great Thanksgiving. And again, appreciate people taking a look at the documents and the work you do. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Craig.